November 14th, 1998, the members of the Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with the people of the town.
During the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you are about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as journal entries by members of the company, along with other found texts.
Company member Greg Perotti.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is third generation. My grandparents moved here in the 1900s. We've had three, well, my daughter makes it fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live, good people, lots of space. Now all the towns in southern Wyoming are spaced out and laid out because of the railroad came through. It was how far they could go before having to refuel and rewater, and Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why all the towns are spaced so far apart. Wyoming is one of the largest states in the country and the least populated.
Towns here. So much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that the people here were nicer than the people in the Midwest where I used to teach because they were happy. They were glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
You've got the old-time traditional rancher types. Laramie is the hub of where they come for supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing all our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engine, rancher.
If you don't take care of your land, then you ruin it and you lose your living. So first of all, you have to take care of your land and do everything you can to improve it.
I love it here. You couldn't ever put me back in that mess out there back east. The cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? Don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most of the time, it don't.
And you've got the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Du Bois, the president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it there, but you'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. And here, in the summertime, my kids play out at night till 11 o'clock, and I don't think twice about it.
And you've got those who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you will definitely know someone they know. So it can only be 1 degree removed at most. As for me, I love it. I love to go to the grocery store because I get to visit with 4, 5, or 6 people every time I go. And I don't really mind people knowing my business because what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like them trains too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me. But most of the time, they don't. Even though one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bosler, but everybody in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle, them trains. Now what they carry is diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
Laramie is better than where I grew up. I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. That's why all the towns are spaced so far. You see, now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came around here. And one time, some of them followed me out to the crime scene. And it was a beautiful day. Absolutely gorgeous day. It was real clear and crisp. And the sky was that blue that you'll never be able to paint. It's just sky blue. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the mountains in the background, they had a little snow on them. This one report, a lady, a person that was out there, she said to me.
So who found the boy? Who was out here anyway?
I said, well, this area is really popular for people to run. And mountain biking's really big out here, horseback riding, and, well, it's close to town. And she looked at me and she said,
Who in the hell would want to run out here?
And I said, lady, you're just missing the point. You're just missing the whole point. All you gotta do is turn around, see the mountains, smell the air, listen to the birds, and just take in what's around you. She was just nothing but the story. I didn't feel judged. I just felt that they were stupid. They're just missing the point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now, to tell you what Laramie is for us.
Jedediah Schultz.
If you would have asked me before, I would have told you Laramie's a beautiful town, secluded enough that you can have your own identity, a town with a strong sense of community. Everyone knows everyone. You know, like a town with a personality that most larger cities are stripped of. But now, after Matthew, I'd say Laramie's a town defined by an accident, a crime. We've become Waco, we've become Jasper even. We're a noun, a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but it sure will take a while.
Journal entries. Members of the company, Andy Paris.
Moses called saying he had an idea for his next theater project. Ominous to his voice. So I asked what it was all about, and he said he wanted to do a project on what's happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Belber.
Lee told me the company was thinking of going out to Laramie and conducting interviews and that they wanted me to come. But I'm hesitant. I'm not really interested in prying into a town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronich.
I've never done anything like this in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed to go to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety precautions. Nobody works alone, everybody carries cell phones. Have made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She's hosting a party for us our first night in Laramie, and has promised to introduce us to possible interviewees.
Well, I must tell you that when I first heard that you were coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say you've just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. And more importantly, I thought about it, and I've decided that we've had so much negative closure on this whole thing, and the students really need to talk. When this whole thing happened, they started talking about it, and then the media descended, and all dialogue just stopped. You know, I really love my students because they are free thinkers. And you may not like what they have to say, and you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck, but they are honest and they're truthful. So there's an excitement here. There's a dynamic here that I never got in North Dakota or in the Midwest because there was so much Puritanism that dictated the way people looked at the world that a lot of they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I would rather have opinions that I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Laramie my whole life. The family moved to Laramie in... forget about it. When I wanted to go to college, my parents said they couldn't pay for me. I wanted to study theater, and I knew that if I was going to go to college, I was going to have to get on a scholarship. And so there's this competition every year, this Wyoming State High School competition. And I knew that if I didn't take first place in duets, that I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I go to the theater department in the university looking for good scenes, and I asked one of the professors, I'm like, I need a killer scene. And he was like, here you go. This is it. And it's from Angels in America. So I read it, and I knew I could win Best Scene if I did a good enough job. And when the time came, I told my parents so that they would come to see me in the competition. Now you have to understand, my parents come to everything. Every ball game, every hockey game, everything I've ever done. And they brought me into their room and told me that if I did that scene, that they would not come to see me in the competition. Because they believe that it is wrong. That homosexuality is wrong. They felt that strongly about it that they didn't want to make their son, they didn't want to see their son do probably the most important thing he'd done to that point in his life. And I didn't know what to do. I had never, ever gone against my parents' wishes. So I was kind of worried about it. But I decided to do it. And all I can remember from the competition is that when we were done, me and my scene partner, we came up to each other, we shook hands, and there was a standing ovation. Man, it was amazing. And we took first place, and we won. And that's how come I can afford to be here at the university, because of that scene. It was one of the best moments of my life. And my parents weren't there for it. And to this day, that was the one thing my parents didn't come see me do. And thinking back on it, I think, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay, so why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer I can give is that, well, I wanted to win. Man, it was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you can tell him.
Company member Greg Perotti.
We arrived today in the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The second I crossed the Wyoming border, I could have sworn I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange the Wyoming border sign said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
Instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds was big then, so yes, there's a lot of us around. But I promise I won't slap you if you leave your elbows on the table.
Today, the company tried to explain to me to no avail what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
We're just passing through.
Company member Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie today, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations, but as we drove into the downtown area, just by the railroad tracks, the buildings still looked like a turn-of-the-century Western town. Oh, and as we drove past the University Inn, the sign where amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted, it read, "Hate is not a Laramie value."
Greg Perotti.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up, well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it, you know. My kids all had horses.
Well, there was more land. I mean, you could keep your pet cow, your horses, your little chickens, you know, just have a little bit of acreage.
I could run around the house in my all-togethers, do the housework while the kids were at school, and nobody could see me. And well, if they got that close.
Well, that's their problem.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right. And you're all-togethers?
Well, yeah, honey. Why wear clothes?
Now, how's he going to use that in his play?
So this was a big ranching town?
Oh, not just ranching. This is a big railroad town at one time. before they moved everything to Cheyenne, Green River, and Omaha. Well, now it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad. Because, what was it, in the 50s? Well, they had one big roundhouse, and they had such a shop, they could build a complete engine.
Well, they did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yep. She washed engines. Her name was Minnie. We used to sing that song for her. You know that song.
What song?
Okay. Run for the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you there.
But I'll tell you, Wyoming, bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has the big, high, whoop-de-doo jobs, but unless you're a professional, well, the bulk of the people are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've been in either the service industry or bartending most of my life. Now I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. You know, here in Laramie, there's a difference, and there always has been. And what it is a class distinction. It's about the ones who are educated and the ones who are not. And the ones who are educated don't understand why the ones who are not don't get educated. That's why I told you my kids had to fight just because their mother was a bartender. Never mind, I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
That's not bragging. That's fact.
But I'll tell you, if it weren't for the university, it would just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, do I have to say it? It's shit out of luck. Oh, Lordy. You got that on your tape. Oh, boy, you're getting an education today.
I guess I am. So let me just ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. I have a daughter that's on the sheriff's department. And, you know, as far as the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or the other, as long as they don't bother me. And even if they did, I'd just say no thank you. And, you know, that's the attitude of most of the Laramie population. They might poke one if they were in a bar situation, you know, they'd been drinking. They might even smack one in the mouth. Then they'd just walk away. Most of them said they just say, I don't swing that way, and whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
I'd say Marge probably knows a lot more, except she's even willing to say, and we have to respect her for that.
Well, where are you going with this story?
Well, we're not quite sure yet, but once we're done, we're going to be sure to bring it around to Laramie.
Okay, then. There are parts I won't tell you.
Today, for the first time, I met with someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Steger, owner of a shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Yeah, Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time I heard him referred to as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I get a phone call about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
And it was Matthew Shepard, and he said to me, can you pick me up at the corner of 3rd and Grand? So anyhow, I pull up to the corner to see who? Matthew Shepard, you know. It's a little guy, about 5'2", soaking wet, and I bet you 97 pounds tops. They say he weighed 110, but I wouldn't believe it. They also said he was 5'5" in the newspapers, but this man was really 5'2", maybe 5'1". So anyhow, he walked up to the window. I'm going to go in steps so you can better understand the principle of this man. So he walks up to the window, and I say, are you Matthew Shepard? And he says, yeah, I'm Matthew, but I don't want you to call me Matthew. I don't want you to call me Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. My name's Matt, and I want you to know I'm gay, and we're going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that? And I said, well, how you paying? The fact is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars. And for that matter, neither does Wyoming. So that meant he was hiring me to take him down to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little shit, you know what I'm saying? He always was. But I liked him because he was straightforward. You see what I'm saying? Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know. You know, how does any one person ever tell about another? You really should talk to my sister, Romaine, though. She was a very close friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time we called him Choo, you know, because we used to call him Machu, and then we just called him Choo Choo. And whenever I think about Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in and he'd be like, you know, and he'd smile at everyone. He just made you feel great. And he would like stare people down in the coffee shop because he always wanted to sit on the end seat so that he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was sitting in that seat, he'd just sit there and stare at them until they left. And then he'd claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, that's all his big interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. I mean, that's the only TV station I ever saw his TV tuned into. He was just really smart in political affairs, but not too smart on, like, common sense things. So he moves to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in.
John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor.
To the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. He was having some difficulties adjusting, but this was home to him, and he made that quite clear. And so his mousiness, his shyness, gave way to a person who was excited about this new track that he was about to embark on. He was just figuring out working on human rights, how he was going to do that. And when that happens to a person, this person begins to bloom a little bit. I mean, he was just starting to say, wow, there are opportunities here. There are things that I can do in this world. I can be important.
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack. And he told me he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus, and he said he was enjoying it. You know, he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. I mean, he was totally stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, but I think that's where he was heading, towards human rights, which only adds to the irony and tragedy of all this.
Let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact. They're not particularly the what do you call them? The queens, gay people, queens, you know. The run around faggot type people. No, they're the ones that ride horses, throw bale, hay, jump on them, and kick ass. You see what I'm saying? As I always say, don't mess with the Wyoming queer, because they will kick you right in your goddamn ass. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. Because I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people, period. I've been lived up here some 40-odd years. You see what I'm saying? And I don't think Wyoming people give a damn one way or another if you're gay or if you're straight. That's just what I just said. Doesn't matter. You walk into a Wyoming bar, and you see 8 men and 1 woman. This is often the case. Now you stop and think, well, who's getting what? Don't take a big intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here
Catherine Connolly.
is that I was the first out lesbian or gay faculty member on campus. And that was in 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. They asked me at my interview what my husband did, and so I came out then. Do you want to hear a funny story? When you first get here as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do. And so I was in my office and I noticed that this woman called, and I was expecting, you know, it was a health insurance phone call, something like that. And so I called her back, and I could hear her. She was on her keyboard, clicking away, and I said, you know, this is Catherine Connolly returning your phone call. And she said, oh, it's you. And I thought, this is bizarre. And then she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. And I was like, uh-huh. And she said, I hear you came as a couple. I'm one too. Well, not a couple, just a person. And so she was a kind of lesbian who knew I was coming, and she wanted to come over and meet me immediately. And she later told me that there were other lesbians she knew that wouldn't be seen with me, that I would irreparably taint them, that just to be seen with me could be a problem.
When I came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Slonaker.
But I kept telling myself, people live where they want to live. And there would be times I would to go down to Denver and I would go to gay bars and people would ask me where I was from. And I'd say, Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men down there from Wyoming, so many gay men who grew up here and were like, that is not a place where I can live. How can you live there? I had to get out. Grr, grr, grr. But every once in a while, there'd be a guy. Oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I mean, I really do love it there. That's a place where I want to live. And they get this starry-eyed look, and I'm like, if that's where you want to live, do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people stay in smaller towns. But it's easier said than done, of course.
Today we are moving from our motel and heading to the Best Western.
Moises Kaufman.
My hope is that it is a better Western.
Amanda Grunich.
Today we divided to go to different churches in the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. We were welcomed into the service by the Reverend himself, standing at the entrance to the chapel. This is what I remember of his sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, there is something I tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Now, scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old. After all, what's a billion years, give or take? The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Meade Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town. Baptist, Mormon, they're everywhere, you know. It's not just Salt Lake, they're all over. They're like jam on toast in this town.
The Mormon church has a little different thing going that irritates some folks.
Doug Laws, stake ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon church.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man today. We don't think that it happened and some folks wrote in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. The prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be on the left side of that panel. So far left that I'm probably sitting by myself is me and the Unitarian Church. Now, Unitarians are by and large humans, many of whom are atheists. I mean, we're not even sure we're a religion. And on the right side of that spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, who is well established here, and God bless him, he did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted, because when we did the vigil, we wanted to invite other ministers, and we called some of them, and they were not going to get involved. They were like, we are going to stand back and see which way the wind blows. And that angered me immensely. I thought, we are supposed to stand out as leaders. And I thought, wow, what's going on here?
God has set boundaries, and one of our responsibilities is to learn these boundaries. What is it that God wants? So you study scripture, you look to your leaders, then you learn what these boundaries are. And once you kind of get a feel for these bounds, then you sort of get a feel for what's out of bounds. There's a proclamation that came out on family. A family is defined as a woman, a man, and children. That's a family. That's about as clear as you can state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon church. No leniency. We just think it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But if you let the Bible be your guide, it's in there. It's all in there.
The Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible to show the rest of the world it says here in the Bible. And now many Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to fight that?
I am a biblicist,
which means the Bible does not need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around, tumbleweed, cement factory, and thought, what the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I'm doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubaida Ullah, an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah, my parents are from Bangladesh. 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. That's really changed my life here in Laramie. Yeah. Like, people started saying things to me like, why do you have to wear that thing on your head? Like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, you know what I mean? So I'll be like, well, it's part of my religion, and they'll be like, this is the worst part, because they'll be like, I know it's part of your religion, but why? And it's, how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord, standing there with my pop and chips? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's so unreal to me that a group from New York will be writing a play about Laramie. And then I was picturing, you're going to be in a play about my town. You're going to be on stage in New York acting like you're us. That's so weird.
Working with a theater company. I went to the Reverend, your husband's church on Sunday, and I was extremely interested in speaking with the Reverend about some of his thoughts about recent events.
Views about homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, but he also doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle. You know what I mean? Oh, and the press had just been terrible after this happened, and the media had been the worst about this whole thing.
I must have been just terrible.
Oh yes, I think we're all just hoping this goes away.
Well, do you think maybe I could call back and speak with your husband just briefly?
Well, all right. You can call him tonight at 9 o'clock.
Thank you so much. I'll do that.
Today, Barbara and I went down to the Fireside Bar, which is the last place that Matt was seen in public.
The Fireside. Definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a small stage area for karaoke. Still, the few afternoon regulars were hardly the college crowd.
The first person we talked to was Matt Mickelson, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He owned Laramie's first opera house. It was called Old Blue Front. And in 1870, Louisa Grandma Swain cast the first woman's ballot in any free election in the world. That's why Wyoming's the equality state, son. So what I want to do is I want to reestablish my bar business as Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium. You know, I want to have a restaurant, I want to have a gift shop, I want to have a pool hall. I want to do all this shit. Every night's ladies' night. So the Fireside's the first step towards the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium.
So, what about the night Matthew was here?
We had karaoke that night. About 20, 30 people here. Matthew Shepard came in, standing right where you're standing, actually. Just hanging out. I mean, if you want to talk to someone, you should really talk to Matt Galloway. He was the kid that was bartending that night. You'd have to meet him. His character speaks for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending?
Okay, I'm gonna make this brief, quick, get this over with. but it will be everything. Factual. Just the facts. Here we go. 10 o'clock, clock in, usual time, Tuesday nights. 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up. Alone, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken, even though you have to pay $9.50 for a six-pack, he'd always buy the same beer.
So what can I tell you about Matt? If you had 100 customers like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I'd ever been in, okay? And nothing to do with sexual orientation. Absolute mannerism. Manners, politeness, intelligence, taking care of me, as in tips, everything. Conversation, just nice, clean cut. Some people you just know, sits down, please, thank you, offers intellect, you know, within their vocabulary. So he kicks it there. Didn't seem to have any worries or like he was looking for anyone, just enjoying his drink and the company around. Now at approximately 11:45, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson come in. I didn't know their names at the time, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They're the accused. So they walked in just very stone-faced, you know, dirty, grungy, rude, gimme, that type of thing. So they walked into the bar, and as you know, paid for a pitcher with dimes and quarters, which is something, I mean, you don't forget that. 5.15 dimes and quarters. That's a freaking nightmare. Now, Henderson and McKinney, they didn't seem intoxicated at all. They just came in, ordered a beer, took the pitcher with them back there in the pool room, and kept to themselves. Next thing I know, probably a half hour later, they were kind of walking around. No beer. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to ask them if they want another one, because obviously they just paid for a pitcher in dimes and quarters. I have a real good feeling they don't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. He would hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They can say it was robbery. I don't buy it for even an iota of a second.
Then, a few moments later, I looked over and Aaron and Russell had been talking to Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said that a guy came up to him and said that he was gay and that he wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And that he got aggravated with it and told him he was straight and that he didn't want anything to do with him, and he walked off. He said that's when he and Russ went to the bathroom and decided to pretend they were gay and get him in the truck and rob him.
Okay, no. They stated that Matt approached them, that he came on to them. I absolutely, positively disbelieve and refute the statement 100%. Refute it. I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would he approach them? Why them? He wasn't approaching anybody else in the bar. They say he's gay, he's a flaming gay, he's come on to people like that. Bullshit. He never came on to me. Hello? He came on to them? I don't believe it. 2, territorialism is the word I will use for this, and that's the fact that Matt was sitting there. Aaron and Russell were in the pool area. Upon their first interaction, they were in Matt's area, the area that Matt had been seeing all night. So who approached who by that?
But Matt was the kind of person, he would never not talk to someone for any reason. If someone started talking to him, he'd just be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He never had a problem just striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely at times. Me knowing that and knowing how gullible Matt could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that he was at the bar alone without any friends made him that much more vulnerable.
So the only thing is, and this is what I'm testifying to, because, I'm basically the key eyewitness in this case. Basically, what I'm testifying is that I saw Matthew leave. I saw two individuals leave with Matthew. Upon their first interaction, they were at the bar. I didn't see their faces, but I saw the back of their heads. At the same time, McKinney and Henderson were no longer around. You do the math.
Hold on a second, hold on. You know, I actually been thinking about it. I think the DJ was the last one to talk to him on the way out. You know, gave him a cigarette or something. His name's Shadow.
I was the last person that Matt talked to before we left the fireside. I was just bullshitting around with my shit, and he stopped me. I stopped him, actually. And he's like, hey, Shadow. Da-da-da. And I was like, what, man? You getting ready to leave? And he's like, yeah, man, and this and that. But then I noticed them two guys, and they stood outside. You could see it. They were standing there, you know. And he was looking over to them, and they were looking back at him. And I stood and talked to Matt for like a good 10 minutes. And you see them guys with him. You see him getting like, worried, you know, anxious to leave and shit. So when they took off, I seen it when they took off. It was in a black truck. It was a small truck. And the three of them sat in the front seat, and Matt sat in the middle. And I think nothing of it. I didn't figure them guys were gonna be like that.
A friend of Aaron McKinney's.
Oh, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot, and that's why I was so shocked when I heard this, you know? I'm like, I mean, I know he was living out far in his trailer house with his girl, is what he told me. They just started dating last summer, and they must have gotten pregnant as soon as they started dating because, you know, he had a kid. I mean, he was only 21 years old, but he was running around with a kid. But I mean, that's just the kind of person Aaron was, you know? Like, he would always dress in big clothes, like Tommy Hilfiger and Polo and Gucci. At the time I knew him, though, Aaron was just a young kid, you know, just acting tough, acting cool, just trying to fit in. But you could get in his face about it, and he would back down, like he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Annenson.
Russell was just so sweet. He was the one that was Eagle Scout, you know. I mean, his whole presence was just quiet and sweet. So, of course, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I know people like Snap and whatever, and that it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work with him at the Chuck Wagon, too. And I remember, like, one time at the Christmas party, he was just totally drunk out of his mind. I mean, we all were pretty much just like, party time. And he wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was just the same old meek Russell. I remember him coming up to me and saying, when you get a chance, Sherry, can I have a dance? Which we never did get around to doing. But now I just want to shake him, you know? What were you thinking? What in the hell were you thinking? The fence. I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place has become a pilgrimage site. Now, clearly, that's a very powerful, personal experience to have. It's so stark and so empty out there, and you can't help but think of Matthew up there for 18 hours in nearly freezing temperatures, isolated. And the God, my God, why have you forsaken me comes to mind.
Company member Greg Perotti.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew's, took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure no one saw me crying.
Lee Fondakowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there at the fence. I don't think I'm up for it right now. I'll see if someone else can do it.
Well, I took off on my bicycle around 5 p.m. Wednesday from my dorm. I just kind of felt like going for a ride, you know? So I got to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with that area, so on my way back down, I didn't really know where I was going. I was just sort of, you know, picking the way to go, which now it just makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there was no way that I was going to go that way. So I was in some deep-ass sand, right? And I wanted to turn around, but for some reason, I didn't. I just kept going. So I was going along, and there was this rock on the ground, and I just drilled it, you know? I went over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. So I got up. I was just sort of dusting myself off. And I looked around, and I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt, you know, lying there by a fence. And, you know, I just thought it was a scarecrow. I figured, you know, Halloween's coming up. I figured it was some sort of Halloween gag. So I didn't think anything of it. You know, I just kept going along. I got my bike. I walked it around the fence. It was a buck-type fence. And I got closer, and that's when I noticed his hair. And that was a major key to me knowing that it was a human being, was his hair. Because up until then, I just thought it was a dummy. Seriously, I even noticed the chest moving up and down. And I still thought it was a dummy, you know? I just thought it was some sort of mechanism. But when I saw hair, I knew it was a human being. So I just ran to the nearest house. I just ran as fast as I could, and I called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got there, at first the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet, and I got out of my vehicle and I raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young man, about 13, 14 years old, because he was so tiny, laying on his back, and he was tied to the bottom end of the pole. I did the best that I could. The gentleman that was laying there, Matthew Shepard, he was covered in dry blood over his head, and there was blood underneath him, and he was just barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. And I was going to breathe for him, but I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dry blood all over his head. And the only place that he did not have any blood on his face, was what appeared to be where he had been crying down his face. His head was distorted. You know, it did not look normal. He looked as if he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working in the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think that any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. Those of us who have worked in a big city hospital have seen this, but there are some people here who have not worked in a big city hospital. It's just not something you expect here. You expect this kind of injury to come from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see gross injuries from something like that. This horrendous, terrible thing. But you don't expect to see that from somebody doing it to another person. The ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
There was nothing that I could do. I mean, if there was anything that I could have done to try and help him, I would have done it, but there was nothing. I mean, I tried yelling out at him to get something out of him, like, hey, wake up, hello. But he didn't flinch, he didn't move. He didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out in what we call a cuffing position. That's the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin white rope. It went around the bottom end of the pole about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was tied extremely tight, so I tried to use my boot knife and slip it between the rope and his wrist, and I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is? Certainly, you'd like to think that it's somebody from out of town who just comes through and beats somebody. I mean, things like this happen. Shit happens, and it happens in Laramie. But when there's been somebody who has been beaten repeatedly, certainly that is something that offends us. I think that's a good word. It offends us.
He was tied so tight. I finally got my knife through there, and I'm sorry. I finally got my knife through there, and I seen the EMS unit trying to get the location, and when the ambulance got there, we put a neck collar on him and put him on a backboard and scooted him out from underneath the fence. And I rolled him over to his left side, and when I did that, he stopped breathing. So immediately I rolled him back onto his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment. It gave me enough room to cut him free there. Rob drove the ambulance to Ivinson Hospital's emergency room.
Now, 20 minutes before Matthew came in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now, I guess he had gotten into a fight later on that night back in town, so I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in with Matthew. Now, at this point, I don't know that there's a connection at all, so I tell Aaron to wait, and I go to treat Matthew. So there's Aaron in one room of the hospital, and Matthew in another room, 2 doors down. Now, as soon as we saw Matthew, it was very obvious that his care was beyond our capabilities, so called the neurosurgeon at Poudre Valley Hospital. He was on the road in an hour, 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew, and I would never have recognized him.
Then 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. These were 2 kids. They were both my patients, but they were 2 kids. I took care of both of them, of both their bodies. And for a brief moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down at us, how we are all his kids. Our souls, our bodies. And I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
Well, the news reports started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the attack was not mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man, a Laramie man, found beaten out on the prairie, basically. Later that evening, they mentioned his name. It was like, that can't. That's not the Matthew Shepard I know. That's not this person who I've been meeting with. That's not my student.
I was in the coffee shop.
Romaine Patterson.
And someone pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but they say there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie, and they say his name was Matthew Shepard. And he said, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish and I said, tell me what you know. I'm just like, I need to know anything you know because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that is when the whole story came up on Channel 5 News, and it was just like, ba-boom.
And the news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student, his age, his description. It's like, oh my God.
And I was just sick to my stomach. It was just like instantly sick to my stomach. Because I had to tell Romaine, yeah, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what is overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
Friday morning, I first find out about it. Go to class, walk out, boom. There it is, in the branding iron. So immediately, I drive down to the nearest newsstand, buy a Laramie boomerang, because I want more details, buy that, go home, and before I can even open the paper, my boss calls me, and he's like,
Did you hear about what happened?
I'm like, yeah.
Was he in the bar Tuesday night?
I go, yes. Yes, he was.
Jesus. You got to get down to the bar right now. We got to talk about this. We got to discuss what's going to go on.
By this time, I was starting to get upset, but still, the severity wasn't out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
Rulon Stacy at the Poudre Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We just got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. We have a couple of newspaper reporters here asking questions. And so we decided that we needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I'll do that, and we'll try to gather all the information that we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night, where they started speaking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson, and he's like,
All right, we got to go to the arraignment so we can identify these guys and make sure these guys were in the bar Tuesday night.
So we go to the arraignment.
Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse.
Where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged for the brutal beating of
Matthew Shepard,
a gay University of
Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime. And I said, I'm just going. I just took off. It's just down the street. So I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anyone told you about the arraignment? There were probably about 100 people from town and just as many news media by that point. A lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids that everyone who's from around here has some kind of relationship to. And what everyone was really, I think, waiting on pins and needles for what would happen when the perpetrators walked in. And what happened, there's 200 people in the room at this point, and they walked in their complete orange jumpsuits and their shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were teary at that point. But then the judge came in and did a reading, and it's a reading of the evidence that the prosecution has, and it's a statement of facts. And the reading of the facts was,
the essential facts are that the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar, and after Mr. Shepard confided that he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department, who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard.
I don't think there was a single person left in that courtroom who wasn't crying at the end of it. I mean, it lasted 5 minutes, but it kept on getting more and more horrific, ending with,
said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Sergeant Ting.
You've got the news story where they got the graphics in the background. And it's like, what is this? How could this happen? Laramie has one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state. And it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Laughlin.
Was that they were from somewhere else. That then, of course, you create that distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty clear that we do grow children like that here.
so that was the arraignment. And my response was pretty catatonic. Not sleeping, not eating. Don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came in about the sheer brutality of the attack, motivations, how this happened. And then, quite frankly, the media descended, and there was no time to reflect on it anymore.
Wyoming, often called the gem city of the plains, is now at the eye of the storm. The cowboy state has its
Aaron James McKinney and his friend Russell Henderson came from the port.
As a gay college student lay hospitalized in critical condition after a severe beating, this small city was
People like
as
you,
Wyoming's
that what happened
hometown.
in Matthew wasn't acceptable in school, but it was an extreme version of what happens in our schools on a daily basis.
And as his friends all know, to be gay in cowboy country.
Huge. Yeah, it was herds. And we're talking hundreds of reporters, which makes a huge dent in this town's population. There were reporters everywhere. News trucks everywhere on campus, everywhere around the town. And we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are predators. Like, this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist was like offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started, like the good press, you know?
I'll tell you what, when Hard Copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape, so if they ever do anything funny, they better watch their goddamn ass.
Governor Jim Geringer, a first Republican up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over others. We will wait and see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate. Thank you.
Wyoming's dripping red like it's got blood on it or something. What is this? This is sensationalism. We're here like we had the guy in jail in less than 1 day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned, that we're not a good community, and we are. The majority of people here are good people.
You get bad apples once in a while, and I think the gay community took this as an advantage. Said, it's a good time for us to exploit this.
Had this been heterosexual, these two boys decided to take out and rob, it never would have made national news. Now my son is guilty before he's even had a trial.
Look, I do think that the media actually made people accountable because they made people think, because people were like sitting in their homes watching TV and listening to CNN and watching Dan Rather and going, Jesus Christ, well, that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here?
For 3 p.m., Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out there, and where there had been 2 or 3 reporters, it must have been about 10 or 15 still photographers, another 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. The parents had just arrived. I had barely introduced myself to them. I looked out there and thought, my gosh, what am I gonna do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of the right ear. This has caused bleeding in the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the past 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We have had difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill and know that they are something Matthew would appreciate too. We also have a special request for the members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, so we ask that you respect our privacy as well as Matthew's so we can concentrate all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends, Chastity Paisley and Kristen Price, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we spoke with the Chief Investigating Officer on the case, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
I guess the thing that bothered me the most was going out to Poudre where Matthew was, and the thing that bothered me the most was seeing him. touching him. As a homicide detective, you look at bodies. This poor boy was sitting here fighting all his life trying to make it. I wanted it so by the book, you know?
I keep seeing that image of him in my head when I first found him,
Aaron Kreifels.
and it's not pleasant whatsoever. You know, I don't want it to be there. I just want it out. That's the biggest thing for me, is seeing that image in my head. And you know, it's kind of crazy to me, you know, that I'm the one who ended up finding him. Because the thing with me and with my religion is, why did God want me to find him?
How to take care of myself. And I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
So what that means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets, or seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me, having to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And in reality, the truck did not come after me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I had amazing hindsight of 2020 to have stopped what occurred, and I keep thinking, I should have noticed. Those guys shouldn't have been talking to this guy. I should have not had my head down when I was washing dishes for those 20 seconds. Things I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
So, you do a lot of studying. You spend hours and hours and hours. You study and study and study, questioning your officers, making sure they understand, talking to your witnesses, and then always coming back to, I get this flash of seeing Matthew. I wanted it so tight that there was no way that they were going to get out of this.
And when I got to the fence,
Reggie Flutie.
it was such an overwhelming amount of blood. And we tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a real cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us shit gloves. You know, you put them on, and they just keep breaking. So finally, you just run out of gloves. And don't hesitate. That's what your mind always tells you, you know, don't hesitate. And so you keep moving, and you try to help Matthew find an airway. And that's what you do, you know?
Is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she told me she wanted to be a police officer, I thought there was no better choice for her. You know, she could handle whatever came her way.
Probably about a day and a half later, the hospital called me and they said Matthew had HIV. And you've been exposed, and you've had a bad exposure because, you see, I'd been building a lean-to for my llamas, and so I had a bunch of open cuts all over my hands, and so I was kind of screwed, you know, and you think, oh, shoot, you know.
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
And so I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? And they said, get up here. So I got up there, and we started the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now, they tell me that that's a medication that, if it's administered 36 hours after the exposure, it could maybe stop you from getting the disease.
Now that is a mean, nasty medication. Mean. I've lost about 10 pounds and a lot of my hair. Yeah.
And quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew, please understand. Not one of us was mad at Matthew, but we maybe wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I just think of Henderson. You know, these two absolutely human beings cause so much grief for so many people. It's been terrible for my whole family, but mostly for her and her kids.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now.
And you know, my parents, they both said the same damn thing.
You are quitting this damn job.
And it's just a parent thing. You know, and they're terribly proud of you, whether it's handling a drunk or handling a case like this, but they're, you know, they don't want you getting hurt.
Like I said, there's a right way, a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So finally, I just said, oh, for God's sakes, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn.
You know, they tell me I'm stubborn, and I don't believe them. But I think, okay, I've heard your opinion, now here's mine. I'm 39 years old, so what are they gonna do, spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
It'd look pretty funny. You know, what can they say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. You know, I couldn't handle that.
University of Wyoming President Philip Du Bois.
Well, this is a young person who read my statement on the Denver Post story and sent an email to me directly and said,
You and the straight people of Laramie and Wyoming are guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard. Just as the Germans who look the other way are guilty of the deaths of the Jews, the gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. Unless and until you acknowledge that this is not just a random occurrence, that this is not just the acts of a couple of crazies, you have Matthew's blood on your hands.
And, well, I just can't begin to tell you what that does to you. And it's like, you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't possibly know what this has done to me and my family and my community.
That first week alone, vigils for Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine, among others. In Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered, and in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. And the Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery.
Matthew Shepard medical update, 9 a.m., Sunday, October 11th.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. They also want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concerns for their son.
And the Reverend will tell you flat out he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And I don't know. I think right now I'm going through changes. I'm still learning about myself, and I feel like I don't know enough about certain things to make a decision that says homosexuality is right. When you've been raised your whole life that it is wrong, and right now I'd say that I don't agree with it, yeah, that I don't agree with it. But maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. But I don't hate homosexuals, and I mean, I'm not going to persecute them or anything like that at all. That's not going to get in between me and the other person at all.
Well, it's preached in schools that being gay is okay and yada, yada, yada. And if my kids asked me, I'd set them down and I'd say, this is what gay people do. This is what animals do, okay? And I'd tell them, this is the life. This is the lifestyle. This is what they do. And I'd say, this is why I believe it's wrong.
There are more gay people than you think.
Murdoch.
You don't know it, because most of them that are gay or lesbian know damn well who to talk to. Some people are saying he made a pass at them. You don't pick up regular people. Now, I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel a whole lot better that it was partially Matthew Shepard's fault and partially the guy who did it. Maybe 50-50.
Yes. As a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety.
Zachy Salmon.
I think we all were. And I think it's because somewhere inside we all know it could happen to us anytime. I mean, I would be scared to walk down the street and display any sort of physical affection for my partner. You don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea. You leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Jonas Slonaker.
And it's even in some of the Western literature. You know, live and let live. That is such crap. I tell my friends that. Even my gay friends bring it up sometimes. And I'm like, that is crap, you know? I mean, basically what it boils down to is, if I don't tell you I'm a fag, you won't beat the crap out of me. What's so great about that? That's a great philosophy.
We went to the candle vigil.
Zubaida Ula.
And it was so good to be with people who felt like shit. I kept on feeling like I don't deserve to feel this bad, you know? And then someone got up there and they said, blah, 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 blah. And then they said, I'm saying it wrong, but basically they said, come on, guys, let's show the world that Laramie's not this kind of a town. But it is this kind of a town. If it wasn't this kind of a town, then why did it happen here? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a lie because it happened here. So how could it not be one of those towns where these kinds of things happen? Like, that's just like looking at an Escher painting and getting all confused. Like, it's totally like circular logic. Like, how can you even say that? And we have to mourn this, and we have to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where shit like this happens. And people are trying to distance themselves from this crime, but we have to own this crime. I feel we all have to own it. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
At bar one afternoon when I ran into two friends of Aaron McKinney, Shannon and Jen. So you two knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out, I thought it was really, really awful. I don't know whether Aaron was fucked up or whether he was coming down or what. But Matthew had money. Shit, he had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right.
Well, I'm not saying he's a bad guy either. Because he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, said the wrong things. And I don't know, I won't lie to you. There was times that I was all messed up on meth and I thought about going out and robbing. I mean, I never did. But yeah, it was there. It's easy money.
Aaron's done that thing before. They've both done it. I know one time they went out to Cheyenne to go do it and they came back with like $300. I mean, I don't know if they ever chose gay people as their particular targets before, but anyone who looked like they had a lot of money and that they could, you know, outnumber or overpower was fair game.
But do you think that there was any homophobia at all that could have contributed to any of it?
Probably. It probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay, because Aaron didn't like gay. The gay people that I've seen him interact with, he was fine as long as they didn't hit on him, as long as it didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Do you get the impression that Aaron knew other gay people?
I'm sure that he knew people are gay. I mean, he worked up at the KFC and there was a couple people there that, yeah. And I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because, I don't know, half people I know here in Laramie are gay.
What would you say to Aaron if you could see him right now?
First of all, I'd ask him if he'd ever do any more tweak.
If I saw Aaron, I'd be like, man, why'd you fuck up like that? But probably want to make sure he's doing okay. I mean, I'm sure he is, though. I'd probably just want to, like, hang out with him.
Smoke a bowl with him.
I bet he wants one so bad.
So you two both went to Laramie High.
Yeah. Can't you tell? We're a product of our society.
On a day that is traditionally given over to nothing more profound than collegiate exuberance and the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming Saturday, as many searched their souls in the wake of a vicious, apparent anti-gay hate crime.
University President Philip Du Bois.
This was homecoming weekend, and there was a homecoming parade that was scheduled, and then the students organized to tag onto the back of the banner, you know, behind the banner supporting Matt, and everybody wearing the armbands that the students had created.
I live in the center of town,
Harry Woods.
and my apartment has 2 windows on opposite streets. One goes north and one goes south. And that is exactly the homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall. So, I was very disappointed because I really wanted to walk with the people who were marching for Matthew. But I couldn't. So, I watched from my apartment window. And it was, it was. I'm 52 years old, and I'm gay. I've lived here for many years, and I've seen a lot. So I was very moved when I saw the tag at the end of the homecoming parade. About 100 people were walking behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. Well, the parade ended up going down to the end of the block to make a U-turn. So I got up to the other side of my apartment to watch it come south down the other street.
I was right up in front there where they're holding the banner for Matthew, and let me tell you, I've never had goosebumps so long in my life. It was incredible. A mass of people. Families, mothers holding their 6-year-old kids, tying these armbands around these 6-year-old kids, and trying to explain to them why they should wear an armband. It's just amazing. I mean, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my life.
Well, about 10 minutes went by, and sure enough, the parade started coming down the street. And then I saw the most, incredible thing. As the parade was coming down the street, the amount of people who were walking for Matthew had grown 5 times. About 500 people were marching for Matthew. 500 people. Can you imagine? I mean, the tag at the end was larger than the entire parade. And people kept joining in. And you know what? I started to cry. You know, tears were streaming down my face. I thought, thank God that I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
I really haven't been all that involved per se. My husband's a highway patrolman, so that's really the only way I've known about it. Now, when I first found out, I thought it was just horrible. I can't. Nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. But the other thing that was not brought out, at the same time that happened, was that patrolman was killed. And there was nothing. Nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man who killed him. He was driving down the road when he shouldn't have been driving and killed him. That was just a little piece in the paper. I mean, we lost one of our guys. You know, my husband worked with him. This man was brand new to the force, but here's one of ours. Just a little piece in the paper. And I guess a lot of it is my feeling that the media is portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint and making him as a martyr. And I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. Now, I didn't know him, but the things I found out about him, it's scary. You know about his character and spreading AIDS and a few other things. I mean, being the kind of person he was a barfly and he flung himself around. I think he even flaunted it. Well, everybody's got their problems, but why they're exemplifying him? I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder somebody, of course you hate them. It has nothing to do whether you're gay or a prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. I just don't understand.
Lee Fondakowski.
This is one of the last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews non-stop, and we are exhausted.
We are to meet with Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was wishing we could skip the interview altogether, but we have to follow through to the end. So here we go. 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. You realize that. He has served us all well, and I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who has done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. And I'm not going to sit here and say I was this bold guy, no fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in this community when this first happened. And I thought, should we call the bishop and ask his permission to do the vigil? And I thought, hell no, I'm not going to do that. His permission doesn't make it correct. You realize that. And I'm not knocking bishops or anything, but what is correct is correct. You people are just out here on a search, though. I will tell you this. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you do your best to say it right, to say it correct. You have the responsibility to do that. Don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew? They did do violence to Matthew, but every time that you are called a fag or a les or whatever.
Or dyke.
Dyke. Yeah, dyke. You realize that that is the seed of violence, and I would resent it immensely if you used anything I said to somehow cultivate that kind of violence, even in its smallest form. I would resent it immensely. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to say it correct.
Andrew Gomez.
I was there. I was in jail with Aaron in December. I got thrown in over Christmas, Assault and battery, 2 counts. I don't want to talk about it. But we were sitting there, trying to eat our Christmas dinner. Trying to eat my stuffing, my bread, my little roll and whatnot. And I asked him, You know, I asked him. I was like, hey, homie, tell me something. Yeah. Tell me something, please. Now, why would you... You know, I'm trying to figure out how I worded this. Why would you kill a faggot if you were just going to be destined to be a faggot later? I mean, think about it. He's either going to get humped a lot or he's going to die. So why would you do that? Think about that. I don't understand. And you know what he says to me? Honest to God, this is what he said. He said, he tried to grab my dick. That's what he said, man. He's dumb, dog. He don't even act like it was nothing. You know, I heard they were auctioning those boys off up in the Max Ward, where the killers go. I heard when they found out Aaron was going up there, they were auctioning those boys off. Yeah, I want them. I put down 5, 6, 7 cartons of cigarettes. Auction his ass off. I'd be scared to go to prison if I was one of those 2 boys.
Hello?
Reverend,
Yes, hello?
I believe your wife told you a bit about why I'm contacting you.
Yes, she did, and let me tell you, I'm afraid I don't want to talk to anyone about any of this incident. I am somewhat involved.
Look, I
and
completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your service this Sunday.
You went to the services on Sunday?
Yes, I did.
On Sunday?
This past Sunday.
Did I meet you? I see. Well, let me tell you, I'm not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind, and that is not necessarily the views of my congregation per se. Now, as I said, I am somewhat involved. That the people in this case, well, the girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited. Now, those 2 people, the accused, well, they forfeited their lives. We've been after those 2 for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right, and now one of the boys is on suicide watch, and I am working with him. Until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice, I will continue to work for his salvation. Now, I believe they deserve the death penalty, and I will try to deal with them spiritually.
Right, I understand.
Now, as for the victim, I know that lifestyle is legal, but I will tell you one thing. I hope that Matthew Shepard, as he was tied to that fence, had a chance to reflect on a time when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him, and that before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your speaking with me.
Around 11:30 that night, I had just barely gone to bed, and Margot, our chief operating officer, called and said his blood pressure has started to drop. Well, let's wait and see. She called me again about 10 after. He just died. So I quick got dressed and came in and went up to the ICU where the family was, and Judy came up and she put her arms around me and I put my arms around her, and we just stood there, honestly, for about 10 minutes, just 'cause what else do you do? And then we had to sit and talk about things that you just, Dennis, it's now public knowledge, and I'm gonna go out there now and tell the whole world that this has happened. 'Cause by this point it was clear that it was the world. It was the whole world. And so Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out at 4:00 a.m.
"4:30 a.m., Monday, October 12th.
At 12 midnight on Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified his family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family again asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for the overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring until the end and removed any stress or guilt from the family. He came into this world premature and left this world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home, give your kids a hug, and don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them." Again, I don't know how I let that happen. I lost it on national television. But we had been up for like 72 hours straight and got home and got to bed for like a half an hour and had to get up and come back in, and maybe I was just way. I don't know. But in a moment of complete brain deadness, while I was out there reading that statement, I thought about my own 4 daughters and go home, hug your kids, and she doesn't have her kid anymore. And there I am thinking, this is so lame, dumb. And then we started to get people sending us emails and letters, and most of them were generally very kind, but I did get this one. This guy wrote me and said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all of your patients or just the faggots?" And as I told you before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle with which I agree, but having been thrown into this, I guess I just didn't understand the magnitude with which some people hate. And out of all the letters we got, there were maybe 2 or 3 that were like that. Most of them were, "Thank you for your caring and compassion," and Matthew got caring and compassion from the moment he got here.
I spoke with Doc today and told him that I would be coming back out for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. And this is what he had to say.
I'll tell you what, if they put those 2 boys to death, that would defeat everything Matt would be thinking about on them right now. Because Matt would not want to see those 2 to die. He'd want to lead them with hope. H-O-P-E. Just like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive that night. The whole thing, you see, the whole thing. Ropes around hope. H-O-P-E.
So bad. Big, huge, wet snowflakes. And when I got there were thousands of people, just black with umbrellas everywhere. And there were 2 churches. One for the immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature. And then there was one for everybody else who wanted to be there. And still, hundreds of people outside that couldn't fit into either of the churches. And there was a big park by the church. And that's where these people were. And this park was full.
Today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites your full participation. The Lord be with you. Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm that they've had.
Tiffany Edwards.
Like, that anybody could ever tell. Like, trees fell down and the power went out for a couple of days because of it. And I just thought, it's like the forces of the universe at work, you know? Like, whatever higher spirit, you know, is like that blows storms was blowing this storm.
For our brother Matthew, let us pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, I am the resurrection and life. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
Lord, you who consoled Martha and Mary in their distress, draw near to us who mourn for Matt, and dry the tears of those who weep. We pray to the Lord.
My most striking memory
You wept
from
at
the
the grave
funeral
of Lazarus, your friend. Comfort us in our sorrows.
is seeing the Reverend Fred Phelps from Kansas. That scene go up in the park.
Raise the dead to life.
Do you believe in the
Give to our
Bible?
brother eternal
Do you
life.
believe you're supposed
We
to
pray
separate the
to
precious
Lord.
from the vile? You don't believe that
Paradise
part of
with
the Bible.
repented.
You stand there,
Brother, the
ignorant of the
joys
fact that two times for every verse in the Bible, it talks about God's love,
He was nourished.
it talks about God's hate.
Grant him a place.
A bunch of high school kids who got out early came over
We pray
and started yelling at the
Lord.
people protesting. The Fred Phelps
Comfort us
people.
in our sorrows.
And across the street, you had people lining up for the
Let our
funeral.
faith be our consolation
Well,
and eternal
I remember
life.
this
Our
guy.
hope.
I remember this skinhead coming over, and he was dressed in leather and spikes everywhere. And he came over from across the street into the crowd, and I just thought, this is going to be such an ugly confrontation. But instead, he started leading them in Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace.
The state deals with hundreds of murders every single day. But this murder is different because the fags are bringing us out here, trying to make Matthew Shepard into a poster boy for the gay lifestyle. And we are going to answer it. It's just that simple.
6 months later, the company returned to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, the first of the two perpetrators. It was to be a capital murder trial. When we got to the Albany County Courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
You don't like that attribute of God?
But so was Romaine Patterson.
That perfect attribute of God? Well, we love that attribute of God, and we are going to preach it. That's God's hatred. It's a determination. It's a determination that he's going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred.
After
We are
seeing Fred
standing here
Phelps
with God's
protesting at
message.
Matthew's
We are
funeral
standing here
and finding
with
out that he
God's
was coming to
message.
Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, I decided that someone needed to stand toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think at times like this, when we're talking about hatred as much as the nation is right now, that someone needs to show that there's a better way of dealing with that kind of hatred. So, our idea is to dress up like angels. And so we have designed an angel outfit, for our wings are huge. They're like big-ass wings. And there'll be 10 to 20 of us that are angels. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna encircle Phelps. And because of our big wings, we are gonna completely block him. So this big-ass band of angels comes in, we don't say a word. We just turn our backs to him, and we stand there. And we are a group of people bringing forth a message of peace and love and compassion, and we're calling it Angel Action. Yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him.
When those old preachers laid their hands on me, that's called an ordination. Then they deliver a charge. Mine is from Isaiah 58:1. Cry aloud, speak not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show thy people their transgression.
And I knew that angels were going to be taking the brunt of everything he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking his view. He was going to be like pissed off to all hell. So I went out and bought all my angels earplugs. I once was lost, but now I
The court is in session.
Patterson's sister, Trish Steger.
As soon as they started jury selection, everybody was coming into my shop with, I don't want to be on this trial. I hope they don't call me. Or, oh my God, I've been called. How do I get off? Just trying to get as far away from it as they could. Very fearful that they would have to be part of that jury. And then I heard that Henderson had to sit in the courtroom while they questioned prospective jurors. And one of the questions that they ask is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand a lot of the comments were, yes, I would.
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine hearing that?
Yes, ma'am.
Juror after juror after juror.
Yeah.
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand you wish to change that plea today. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that the recommended sentencing here is 2 life sentences?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you understand that those may run concurrently or they may run consecutively?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask you how you wish to plead, guilty or not guilty.
Guilty.
Before the court decides whether your sentencing will run concurrently or consecutively, I understand there is a statement to be made by at least one individual.
This is an excerpt of a statement made to the court by Lucy Thompson.
As the grandmother, the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering the Shepherds have went through. We have prayed for your family since the very beginning. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matt, and you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers as we know that your pain will never go away. You've showed such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful you were giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we as a family hope that as you sentence Russell, you will do it concurrently 2 life terms. For the Russell we know and love, we humbly plead, Your Honor, to not take Russell completely out of our lives forever.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to do so. Do you have anything you would like to say?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepherd, there's not a moment that goes by where I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was wrong, and I regret greatly what I did. You have my greatest sympathy for what happened. I hope that one day you will be able to find in your hearts to forgive me. Your Honor, I know it was wrong. I'm very sorry for what I did, and I'm ready to pay my debt for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepard to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten, and in order that he might not escape to tell his tale. You left him there for 18 hours, knowing full well that he was there. Perhaps having an opportunity to save his life, and you did nothing. This court does not believe that you feel any true remorse for your part in this matter. And I wonder whether you fully realize the gravity of what you've done. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, that sentencing be ordered as follows. As to count 3, that being felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a term of imprisonment for your natural life. As to count 1, kidnapping, you are to serve a term of imprisonment for your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutively to sentencing for count 3.
After the hearing, we spoke with Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 37 years. Russell's only 21, so I've known him his whole life. I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon Church, so after this happened, you can imagine disbelief. After the sentencing, the church held a disciplinary council, and the result of this was to excommunicate Russell from the church. And what that means is they take your name off the record of the church, so you just disappear. Russell's reaction to this was not positive. It hurt him, and it hurt him too to realize at that point how serious a transgression he had committed. But I will not desert Russell. That is a matter of my religion and my relationship with the family.
Before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilliker at the theater department. She's producing Angels in America this year at the university.
I think that's the focus the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to find ways to reach our students, and the question is, how do we move? How do you reach a whole state where there is obviously some really deep-seated hostility towards gays? How do you reach them? This is just the beginning. And guess who's auditioning for the lead?
My parents!
Jedediah Schultz.
My parents were like, so what plays are you doing this year at school? And I was like, Angels in America. And I told them the whole list of plays. And they're like, Angels in America? Is that play you did in high school? That scene you did in high school? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, huh, so you're gonna audition for it? And I was like, yeah. And we got in this huge argument. And the best thing I knew I had them on is, well, it was just after this performance of Macbeth. And on stage, like, I murdered a little kid, and Lady Macduff, and these two other guys. And she goes, well, she kept saying, she's like, well, you know homosexuality's a sin. She kept saying that. And I'm like, Mom, I literally just played a murderer tonight. And you didn't seem to have a problem with that. I tell you, I've never prepared myself this much for an audition in my life. Never, ever. Not even close.
Not having to do it that much with the gay society here in Laramie.
Detective Sergeant Rob Debris.
Well, once we started working into the case and actually speaking to the people that were gay and finding out what their underlying fears were, well, then it sort of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And probably still going to have people who hold with the old ideals, and I was probably one of them some 14 months ago. But I'm not going to put up with it, and I'm not going to listen to it. And if somebody doesn't like my views on it, fine. The door goes both ways. I've already lost a couple of buddies. I don't care. But I feel more comfortable, and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months.
Reggie Flutie.
And I was able to have the DNA test done, and so they got me to Fort Collins, drew all the blood there, flew it to Michigan, and which was about a week later, I knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying Hail Marys.
Oh, you're just elated, you know, and you think, thank God.
So what's the first thing she does?
Oh, I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. I was just so happy. You know, you're just real happy, and you think, yeah, I hope I did this service well. You know, I hope I did it with some kind of integrity, and, you know, you're just real happy. And my daughters, they just bawled.
Oh, they were so happy.
Oh, and the force.
Oh, boy.
We went out and got
Shit-faced.
shit-faced. It was great. Everybody bought me drinks, too. Oh, and I kissed everybody who walked through the door that night.
Reggie, they don't need to know
No,
that.
I didn't even care if they were male or female. Everybody got a kiss on the lips.
Now, what part of what I just said didn't you understand?
Oh, get over it, Mom.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard died, the trial of Aaron James McKinney was sent to begin.
Probably the question most of you have on your mind is how the McKinney case will proceed.
Cal Rarucha, prosecuting attorney.
And it is the decision of the county attorney's office that this will definitely be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it, but I'm not very proud of that. I was on and off and on. I can't say what I'd do. I'm just too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. Because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is one instance where I truly believe with all my heart, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I don't really know about the death penalty, but I don't ever want to see those boys walk out of Rollins Penitentiary. I'll pay my nickel, or whatever, my little percentage of tax, nickel a day. Make sure his ass stays in there and never sees society again, and definitely never comes in my bar again.
I don't believe in the death penalty. It's too much for me. I don't believe that one person should be killed as redemption for his having killed another. Two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the Shepherds want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere with that. But on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron. He was called AJ. How could we put AJ McKinney? How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now, our most important teachers must be Russell Henderson and Ann McKinney. They have to be our teachers. How do we learn? How do we as a society do to teach you that? I don't think many people will let them be their teachers. I think it would be wonderful if the judge said, in addition to your case, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney. Docket number 6381. The Honorable Barton R. Voigt presiding. The court is in session.
The prosecution played a taped recording of his confession.
My name is Rob Debris, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used against you in the court of law.
The following is an excerpt of that confession.
So you guys, you and Russ, you're at the fireside. So you guys are at the fireside by yourselves, right?
Yeah.
What happens after you leave the fireside?
Some kid wanted to ride home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer. Such a queer dude.
He looks like a queer.
Yeah, like a fag, you know?
Okay. How'd you meet him?
Well, he wanted to ride home. And I just thought, well, the dude's drunk. Let's just take him home.
When did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
Kind of talked about it at the bar.
Okay, what happened next?
We drove him out past Walmart. We got over there and he starts grabbing my legs and grabbing my genitals. And I'm like, look, I'm not a fucking faggot. If you touch me again, you're gonna get it. I don't know what the hell he was trying to do, but I beat him up pretty bad. I think I killed him.
What'd you beat him with?
Blacked out. My fist, my pistol, butt of the gun. Wondering what happened to me. I had a few beers and I don't know. It's almost like I could see what was going on, but I don't know. It was almost like someone else was doing it.
What was the first thing that he said, or that he did inside the truck that made you hit him?
Well, he put his hand on my leg, slid his hand like as if he was going to grab my balls.
When the defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I just wanted to vomit. Because that's like saying it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense when that guy killed Harvey Milk and Moscone. It's the same thing.
As much as part of me didn't want the defense of them saying that it was gay bashing or that it was gay panic, part of me was really grateful because I was scared that they were going to try and say it was a robbery or it was about drugs. So when they used gay panic, I felt this is good. If nothing else, the truth is going to come out. The truth is going to be told.
Did he ever try to defend himself or hit you back?
Yeah. Tried his little swings or whatever, but it wasn't very effective.
How many times did you hit him inside the truck before you guys stopped where you left him?
I'd say I hit him 2 or 3 times. Probably 3 times with my fist and 6 times with my pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Well, yeah. He was getting the shit kicked out of him.
What did he say?
Well, after... He didn't really say much after he asked me to stop.
So, Russ dragged him over to the fence, I'm assuming, and tied him up?
Yeah, something like that. I just remember Russ was laughing at first. Then he got pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious when Russ tied him up?
Yeah. I told him, turn around, don't look at my license plate, because I was scared he would tell the police. Then I asked him what my license plate said, and he read it, and that's why I hit him a few more times.
Just to be clear, so you obviously don't like gay people.
No, I don't.
Would you say you hate them?
I honestly wouldn't say I hate them. But when they start coming on to me and stuff like that, I get pretty aggravated, you know?
Can you answer me one thing? Why'd you guys take his shoes?
I don't know. I will never see my son again.
I don't know. You'll probably go to court sometime today.
Today. So I'm gonna go in there and plead guilty or not guilty today.
No, you're just gonna be arraigned today.
He's gonna die for sure.
There is no doubt that Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So what are they gonna give me? 25 to life, or just the death penalty and get it over with?
I don't know. That's not our job. That's the job of the judge and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case, after having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree murder,
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, which meant the jury can give him the death penalty.
That evening, Judy and Dennis Shepard were approached by McKinney's defense team, who pled for their client's life. The prosecution indicated that they would defer to the family's wishes as to whether or not to pursue the death penalty.
The following morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here is some of what he said.
Aaron James McKinney, guilty.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6th, 1998, my son tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero lost. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep wondering the same thing that I first did when I saw him in the hospital. What would he have become? How could he have changed his piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, along with your friend, Mr. Henderson, left him out there by himself. But he wasn't alone. He had his lifelong friends with him. Friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who these friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky and the same stars and moon that we used to see through a telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scent of pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind. And Wyoming for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God. And I feel better knowing that he wasn't alone. Matt's beating, hospitalization, and funeral focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. People have said, enough is enough. I miss my son. But I am proud to say that he is my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It has been stated that Matt was against the death penalty. Both of these statements are wrong. Matt believed that there were crimes and incidents that justified the death penalty. I believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing more than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, this is the time to begin the healing process, to show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I am going to grant you life. As hard as that is for me to do so, because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you had the opportunity and the ability to stop your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious, and I will never forgive you for that. Mr. McKinney, I'm going to grant you life in the memory of one who no longer lives. May you live a long life. And may you thank Matthew every day for it. Thank you.
And Debris, we hugged, and we just cried. And you're just so thankful, you know, and you think, yeah. And Mr. Shepherd was crying, and that got me bawling. And everybody was just...
This has been all we lived and breathed for a year, daily. This has been our case daily, and now it's finally over.
Maybe now we can go on. And we can quit being stuck, you know?
You know, it just hit me as I was walking out of the courthouse that the reason that God wanted me to find him was for that he didn't have to die out there alone. I mean, if I hadn't have found him, he wouldn't have been found for another couple of weeks at least. So it makes me feel better knowing that you didn't have to die out there alone.
I'm just glad it's over. I really am. Testifying in that trial was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And don't get me wrong, I love this stage. I really do. I love it. But it's tricky because basically what you have is lawyers questioning you from this angle, but the answers they'll be funneling this way to the jury. So what you have to do is establish a funneling system, and that's hard for me because I'm a natural conversationalist. So it's just natural instinct that when someone asks you a question, you look at them to make eye contact. But it's tough when you literally have to scoot over, change your position, in effect, funnel over to where the jury is. But I was able to do that several times over the course of my testimony.
On our last trip to Laramie, I had the privilege of seeing Jedediah Schultz play the role of Noor in the play Angels of America. After the performance, we spoke.
I didn't for the longest time get personally involved in the Matthew Shepard thing. It didn't seem real. It just seemed way blown out of proportion. Matthew Shepard was just a name instead of an individual. I don't know, man. It's weird. It's so weird. I just feel bad. Just for all that stuff I said. For the person I used to be. That's why I want to listen to those interviews last year when I said all that stuff. I don't know, I just can't believe I ever said that stuff about homosexuals, you know? How'd I ever let that stuff let me think that you were any different from me?
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And, well, now it's obviously changed in the fact that, throughout the last year, I've really realized my role in taking my part. And, so now, instead of going to school to be in music, I'm gonna go to school for communications and political science, because I have a career in political activism. I actually recently found out I was going to be honored in Washington, D.C. from the Anti-Defamation League. And whenever I think about the angels or any of the speaking that I've done, Matthew's like guiding this little path with his light for me to walk down. And every time we get to like a door, he opens it and he says, okay, next step. And if I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
Slonaker.
Change is not an easy thing, and I don't think we were up to it here. They got what they wanted, those two boys got what they deserve, and we look good now. Justice has been served the OK corral. We shot down the villains, sent the prostitutes on the train, and the clowns cleaned up, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. You know, it's been a year since Matthew Shepard died, and they haven't passed shit in Wyoming. At a state level, any town, nobody anywhere has passed any kind of anti-discrimination laws or hate crime legislation. Nobody anywhere has passed anything. What's come out of it? What's come out of this that's concrete or lasting?
We all said we would meet again. One last time at the fence.
I've been up to that site in my limousine, okay? And I remember to myself the night he and I drove around together. He said to me, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And where he was up there, if you sit exactly where he was up there, Laramie sparkles from there with the low-lying cloud. It's the blue lights that bounce off the clouds from the airport, and it goes tss, 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 right over the whole city. I mean, it blows you away. Matt was right there in that spot. I can just picture what was in his eyes. I can just picture what he was seeing. The last thing he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights.
We've spent the last 2 days collecting a year's worth of materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedediah cried when he said goodbye.
March was just luck, and when we asked her how Laramie would feel seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd enjoy it. I mean, to show it's not the hellhole of the earth would be nice, but that's up to how you portray us. And that, in turn, is up to how Laramie behaves.
After we got off the phone, she said to me,
Now you take care. I love you, honey.
Doc asked if I wanted to ghostwrite a book about the whole event. Galloway offered me or anyone else a place to stay if and when we came back to Laramie. He also seemed interested as to if there would be any open auditions for this play.
We left Laramie at 7 in the morning. On the way to Denver, I looked in my rearview mirror to get one last look at the town.
And I will speak with you. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you do your best to say it right. You have to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.
When I was in the 3rd grade, I thought that I was gay, cause I could draw. My uncle was, and I kept my room straight. I told my mom, tears rushing down my face. She's like, Ben, you've loved girls since before pre-K. Trippin'. Yeah, I guess she had a point, didn't she? Bunch of stereotypes all in my head. I remember doing the math, like, yeah, I'm good at Little League. A preconceived idea of what it all meant. But those that like the same sex had the characteristics. The right-wing conservatives think it's a decision, and you can be cured with some treatment in religion. Man-made rewiring of a predisposition, playing God. Oh nah, here we go. America the brave still fears what we don't know. And God loves all his children, it's somehow forgotten. But we paraphrase a book written 3,500 years ago. I don't know.
And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. My love, my love, my love, she keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm.
If I was gay, I would think hip-hop hates me. Have you read the YouTube comments lately? Man, that's gay, gets dropped on the daily. We become so numb to what we're saying. A culture founded from oppression, yet we don't have acceptance for 'em. Call each other faggots behind the keys of a message board. A word rooted in hate, yet our genre still ignores it. Gay is synonymous with the lesser. It's the same hate that's caused wars from religion, gender to skin color, the complexion of your pigment. The same fight that led people to walkouts and sit-ins. It's human rights for everybody, there is no difference. Live on and be yourself. When I was at church, they taught me something else. If you preach hate at the service, those words aren't anointed. That holy water that you soak in has been poisoned when everyone else is more.
Thank you for showing your support by being here. We all need a voice in this fight for humanity.
But that's not important. No freedom till we're equal. Damn right I support it.
Go home, hug your kids, and don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them. Thank you, Matthew.
Even if I wanted to.
We love you.
My love, my love, she keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm.
We press play, don't press pause. Progress march on, with the veil over our eyes. We turn our back on the cause, till the day that my uncles can be united by law. When kids aren't walking around the hallway, plagued by pain in their heart. A world so hateful, some would rather die than be who they are. And a certificate on paper isn't gonna solve it all, but it's a damn good place to start. No law is gonna change us, we have to change us. Whatever God you believe in, we come from the same one. Strip away the fear, underneath it's all the same love. About time that we raised up.
I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. My love, my love, my love, she keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. She keeps me warm. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is patient. Love is kind. Not crying on Sundays. Patient. Not crying on Sundays. 'Cause I'm not crying on Sundays. Patient. Not crying on Sundays. 'Cause I'm not crying on Sundays. Patient. Not crying on Sundays. 'Cause I'm not crying on Sundays. Patient. Love is kind.
We press play, don't press pause. Progress march on, with the veil over our eyes. We turn our back on the cause, till the day that my uncles can be united by law. When kids aren't walking around the hallway, plagued by pain in their heart. A world so hateful, some would rather die than be who they are. And a certificate on paper isn't gonna solve it all, but it's a damn good place to start. No law is gonna change us. We have to change us. Whatever God you believe in, we come from the same one. Strip away the fear, underneath it's all the same love. About time that we raised up.
I can't change